Hockey town, going down to hockey town, whoa, whoa. Hockey town, take me down to hockey town, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hello, hockey fans. The Minnesota Hockey Connection Show is on the air. It's Monday, January 23rd. We're at the City Hall in Duluth studios for PACT-TV, and we're ready to talk about hockey for another week. A lot of high school I've been to, a lot of high school games, and went to some great college games down in the cities, Michigan and the Minnesota Gophers, and the Wild. They're on the road this week, and they'll be back on Thursday, and there's a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Well, we might as well start with the annual Hockey Day Minnesota. It's this week on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and this year it's in White Bear Lake. It's at the Polar Lake Park down off the Highway 61 in White Bear Township, and I'll tell you what, this thing is getting bigger and bigger every year. It seems like it goes for 3-4 days now. But this year, it's going to start on Thursday, where they're going to have the girls' game with Forest Lake High School versus the Cretin-Durham Hall girls, and for a high school game. And then at 7:30 Thursday night, they have a celebrity game, and they have Ryan Carter, who works for the Minnesota Wild now and played for the Minnesota Wild. He's a White Bear Lake boy. Thomas Vanek, who's played pro many years and played for the Minnesota Gophers. Joe Disick. I think he's still the Minneapolis high school boys coach. And then Paul Fletcher. So that's to start off the Hockey Day Minnesota down in White Bear. Then Friday, they have a D3 game with St. John's versus Augsburg men's game. And then at 7:30, the White Bear Lake alumni game. So there'll probably be a lot of ex-White Bear Lakes that really played college and pro hockey. And then Saturday is the big day. So it starts at 9:30 in the morning. It's Stillwater versus White Bear Lake girls. Then at 1 p.m., our local team, Hermantown, plays Montemita in the boys. A big Class A game. And it's kind of funny looking at that game. This still could be a championship game at the state tournament in Class A. So we'll see. I mean, there's only 6 teams I see that can be in the finals, and Hermantown and Montemita are 2 of them. So that should be a big game, and I'll probably be at that game. And then 4:30, Hill Murray versus White Bear Lake boys, Class AA game. This is a big rivalry down there for over the years, and both teams are probably a little down this year, but because it's a rivalry game, I'll tell you what, these boys will be going at it. And then 8 p.m. down at the XL Energy Center, Buffalo Sabres versus the Minnesota Wild for the pro game. Usually they have the Gopher game at 4 o'clock, but they're not putting that in there because of a high school game at 4:30. So it's going to be a long day Saturday, and so Bolly's Sports Network, 37 up here in Duluth, I know, they're going to be having hockey all day long, so it should be fun. I know there's going to be a lot of food there, and they'll have shuttles from different parking lots, so parking won't be a problem if you park on the outside. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be a long 3-4 days down there and fun hockey. And boy, they've been doing this about 15 years already. It's crazy. I remember going up to Baudette when it was like wind chills 40 below, 50 below. I remember Grand Rapids, same thing, 40 below wind chills. And then I remember days when Duluth, Hermantown, Moorhead, they had problems because it was too warm. The ice was melting. But this has become a very big event now, and a lot of money's put into it every year, and cities and towns are trying to get in on this. And next year, our hockey town is going to have it up in War Road. Hockey Town, USA. War Road Warriors, who are #1 in Class A this year. So it's going to be a fun day, fun week down at White Bear Lake with Hockey Day, Minnesota. Like I say, I was at a lot of high school games this week. Saw Duluth Denfield. Yeah, it's too bad. Denfield's probably not as deep as they usually are. But you take any team after the top 6, and hey, it's a pretty even skill then going on down. I mean, from 6 to 15, you won't tell the difference in much of these teams, and I think there'll be great competition between them. But if they have to play, especially the first 4 teams, they really don't have a chance with these teams. It's just that much of a difference in Class A. But if you go over to Class AA, you take the top 20 teams. Any night, one of those teams can beat another team. But the bottom line is, when it comes down to playoffs, which team is ready, has a hot goalie, and can win 4, probably 5 tough games in a row. That's the hard one to predict. And I'm just going to go back over on some rankings for this past week. In Class AA, Minnetonka's back in first place. Wayzata went up to War Road and Roseville this past weekend, and they lost to War Road, which was the #1 team in Class A. So 2 #1 teams playing each other in different classes, 3-0. And then the next day, Rosetta tied Roseville. So they're dropping to 3 in my rankings. And then #2 is Maple Grove. Even though they lost a game, they're still a very good team, and their record is 13-3-1. Tonka's record's 15-2, and I like this team. Right now, I would say this is my team to win, go to state and win the state, if I have to predict a winner right now. Okay, #4, Chanhassen, very good record. But the only negative I see with this team at this point of the season is they don't have a strong schedule. They play a lot of weak teams to finish the season. So Chanhassen's my 4th team, and I'm keeping them probably there because of their schedule. #5, Edina. They lost Tonka this week, but they're always ready when playoffs start. Kurt Giles has been there for many years, and his coaching staff is one of the best in the state, and they're 11-4-1. Rogers is #6. They had a good week, and they're 11-2-3. #7 is Andover. Andover's been a funny team. They've played some good games. When that first line of Thornton, Casey, and Conway, which is the top scoring line in the state in Class AA, that line, when they're clicking, that's a hard team to beat. They're not as strong in the back end, even though they won the state tournament. They're going to be a tough team in Section 7 AA, and the only team I see right now giving them a problem would be Duluth East, which beat them earlier in the year 5-1, and that was Duluth East's best game of the year. #8, this has been a very solid team, and after the first of the year here, Cretin-Durham Hall. They're 13-4-1, and they're just rolling. So Cretin-Durham Hall, #8. Benil, they lost to Montemita this week, and so they dropped 1 spot. Benil St. Margaret, and they're 11-5. And then #10, White Bear Lake at 13-2. And same thing with White Bear Lake as Chanhassen. Their schedule's not as strong, so it's hard for them to move up even if they're winning in my book. And then teams to watch: Centennial, Chaplin Park. I got Duluth East now. They're playing pretty decent hockey now, and I think it'll show in the next couple of weeks. They have to play Centennial in a makeup game up at the Heritage Center, and they got Chaplin Park. And so we'll see how they do in the next couple of weeks, and if they are getting better, or are they staying the same, or what. But they get better. I think they can give Andover real hard time in the playoffs if they meet. Again, Eastview, 9-6. They're in the St. Thomas Cretin section 3, AA. And Rosemont is another team in there, so those 4 teams probably will be in the semifinals in section 3, AA, so a lot of competition there. Let's see, we got Holy Family, 12-5. Lakeville South, 9-4-1. Lakeville South is in section 1, AA, and I see them just walking through. I don't see any team in section 1, AA that can compete with Lakeville South right now. Shakopee, Stillwater, and then St. Thomas Academy. St. Thomas Academy, they're a young team, and they're 12-5 this year. And this is former Duluth East coach Mike Randolph. He's coaching down there now, and they just played Hermantown last Saturday, and I was there. And I'll tell you what, it was a pretty good game, but the defense on both teams were letting a lot of breakaways and 2-on-1s, but the St. Thomas goalie played a pretty good game, and they shut out Hermantown 3-0. And I don't think Hermantown's been shut out in about 5-6 years. I think Tonka was the last team that shut Hermantown out. But Hermantown still has a good game. I was talking to the Hermantown coaches. We're talking about different teams, and I mentioned something that, Moorhead High School, 4 of their best players left for juniors in the development team. If they would have had those players on their team this year, I probably would have them number 1, or the team to beat for state championship this year. And then all of a sudden the coaches say, oh, what about us? We lost 3 of our top players. And I thought, well, you're right. They lost the 2 plant boys, Max and Zam. Zam's over in the Chicago Still in the USHL, and Max is over in development team, U17 team. They're both doing real well. Zam came back after the first of the year, and he's playing a lot of games. He's getting a point a game in the USHL, which is very good. And then Ty Hansen, the defenseman, is another one. And all 3 of these kids will be playing at UMD. So it's good to see that they're playing good in a higher class. And moving on, we'll go over to Railroad as the number 1 in Class A. They're 16-0, the only undefeated team in the state of hockey. And then we got Hermantown, which just lost their 2nd game of the year. They lost to Railroad, then they lost to St. Thomas Academy Saturday. Hermantown is 12-2-1. Orono, 14-2. The Orono is a very good team. A lot of people have Montemita number 3, but I say Orono and Montemita are so close, but you can switch or whatever. But Orono number 3 I have. Montemita number 4, 11-4. Montemita might play a little harder schedule. Number 5, I just saw them play against Enfield. They're moving. They're getting better and better. So this is a team you can't look past. War Road will most likely have to play them in the section finals. So East Grand Forks is 11-6. And then number 6, Delano. They're only 9-7. But I'll tell you what, their schedule, they play a tough schedule. It's going to make them a lot better. So and they're in the Orono section, so it's coming down. I'm almost automatically would say the 4 of the top 6 teams will be at the state tournament, and I think they'll all be in the semifinals. Then we move on to the 7th, Detroit Lakes. Number 8, Rockridge. Detroit Lakes and Rockridge are both 11-4-1. Hibbing, 10-5-1. They're number 9. And Minneapolis, they're starting to get it together. They started out slow, but now they're winning a lot of games. And then teams to watch: Albert Lee, Litchfield, Little Falls, St. Cloud Cathedral, Northfield, Two Rivers, New Ulm, and Duluth-Denfield. Even though Duluth-Denfield got beat up this last week, you can put them anywhere from 7 to 15, and all these teams are pretty close to the same because Denfield beat Rockridge and Hibbing, and they beat a lot of these teams that passed this from 7 on earlier in this year. So, and they beat Little Falls, and so they beat a lot of these teams that are past, not in the top 6. So they're a better team than people think. So that's our rankings for January 22nd, 2023, which I do every Sunday. You can go on the MinnesotaHockeyConnection.com site and get the rankings every week. I go on Facebook and like Minnesota Hockey Connection, or you can go on Facebook and like me, Jerry Borough, Borough, and you can get the rankings there. And plus, we put our show every week on Facebook and YouTube and PACT-TV YouTube. So it's different places you can catch our show. So if you ever want to watch the show at a different time, just go on YouTube and PACT-TV and Minnesota Hockey Connection are 2 of the spots to find it. Okay, I was at some college games. I'll tell you what, these were great college teams that I saw on Saturday. I saw the Minnesota Gophers versus the Michigan Wolverines, Big Blue. And I'll tell you what, when I was looking at their starting lineups, 25 draft picks playing against each other. These are all future National Hockey League players. And they didn't disappoint, these players. Both nights went in overtime, and both nights a different team won. Friday night, the Gophers won in overtime, and then Saturday night, Michigan won in overtime. Lots of talent, lots of skill, great coaching. It was just fun to watch. And what's really surprising, Mariucci Arena, 3M Arena at Mariucci, it was full house both nights, over 10,000. They haven't done that in a long, long time. It's been a few years that they had a weekend series where both nights are sold out. So great for the Gophers, and their program is on right now. And plus I was looking at the players that are young, that they're not up for the draft until this year. They got this kid from Michigan. He was scoring a couple goals Saturday night, and I think he scored one on Friday night too. Adam Tilly. I tell you what, this kid's a real deal. And right now, Central Scouting Report for the National Hockey League has him as a number 2 player going in the draft. And then they have, on that same line with Fantilli, they have Brindley. He's up for the draft in the 2nd round. And Minnesota has Luke Middlestead. Right now, Minnesota has 6 defensemen that are drafted already, and they got another one that will get drafted. He's young, so he'll be drafted this summer. And I'll tell you what, it's amazing how many great players both of these teams had, and just fun to watch. Great hockey, and you couldn't. Truthfully, I see Gophers in Michigan in Tampa this year in the Frozen Four, and what a great game that would be if those two matched up and play each other down in Tampa if they got there. So, boy, I loved the games this last weekend. And then just going over some teams in let's see, let's go to the pairwise. Just UMD was out in North Dakota and they split out there, but they're under 500. They're going to have a hard time making it to the playoffs this year. So the only way they probably going to make it is that they got to win their playoff series, and they'll probably have to go away for that, the opening playoff round, and then get down XL in the NCHC Frozen Face-Off, and then win that. That's probably the only way, unless they can win out. But they got St. Cloud State coming up this weekend. You know, UMD's a young team. They don't have as much offense off their D, but I say they're coming along. I mean, they're young, so you got to expect some times where, hey, it's not going right. And I think Scott Sandlin has a right to get a little mad at the refs this year. I think he's got some calls that went against him that shouldn't, but that's my opinion. But I think the UMD fans, they've had a good run and hang in there, and I think they'll be back soon because they got some good players coming in, and they got some young ones that, as time goes on, they're going to get better and better. And Scott, has been a great coach for the last 10 years, so let's hang in there, Bulldog fans. So pairwise, it's kind of funny. I'm looking at the pairwise, and the two Minnesota teams are 1 and 2. Minnesota Gophers are number 1 in the pairwise, and then St. Cloud State is number 2. It's kind of funny. A couple weeks ago, they played each other home and home, and they split. So I guess the pairwise has it pretty close. But this is the year of the Big Ten. I tell you what, all the Big Ten teams are really good this year. So they got Minnesota number 1. They got Penn State number 3 in the pairwise. They got Ohio State number 7. They got Michigan tied with Ohio State at 7. So that's 4 teams. Then they got Michigan State 13 and Notre Dame 15. So right now they got all the teams in the Big Ten ready to go to the playoffs of the regions right now. So we'll see. Minnesota Gophers, they got Michigan State this weekend. And Michigan State's been a surprise team in the Big Ten. No one expected them to play this good, but they are. And they're gonna be here at Mariucci this weekend, and we'll see how the Gophers play against them. But in the NCHC, so we got St. Cloud State number 2, Denver number 5, and then we got Western Michigan number 9. And let's see, any other team then we got those 3 in pairwise. And like I said, NCHC has been a team to reckon with ever since they came in, made their own league. And they've been the top league for years and years then. And now the Big Ten is the conference this year. And looking at all the teams in the pairwise right now, I've seen Minnesota play many times. I've seen St. Cloud a few times. I've seen Penn State. I've seen Denver a few times. I saw Michigan. I'll see Ohio State in a few weeks against the Gophers. I'll see Western Michigan. I saw Cornell. I'll see Michigan State this weekend. I saw Minnesota State. So most of the teams in the pairwise in the top 16 I've seen, and I tell you what, We still got some good hockey in Minnesota and the Midwest with Minnesota, St. Cloud, Denver. So I'm liking the hockey back here in our state still a lot. And I think we have a good chance of winning the Frozen Four again in our area. So stay tuned. College hockey. Now we got the Wild. Some nice things about the Wild. They signed Matt Bodie to a 7-year contract, $49 million. Young kid. He's going to get $7 million a year for a long time. So he'll be around. So we got some young players that are going to be around the Wild. So, but we still have the Parisi and Suter contracts. So that's close to $15 million a year that we can't spend because it's tied up with those contracts still, even though they're not on the team. And so just think we can get 3 good players. But other news is that when Warroad beat Hermantown a couple weeks ago, I was looking back at records, and that was the first time Hermantown has lost to a single A school, Class A school, in 103 games. They had a 103 game consecutive victory. That is an amazing record. So I'm sure they're going to start another one now. So a lot of hockey this week. Hockey Day Minnesota down in White Bear. Get down there if you want to see a lot of hockey. And the Gophers are playing and the Wild are playing. Thursday night is the Philadelphia Flyers are in town. And then Buffalo's there for Hockey Day Minnesota at 8 p.m. game instead of 7 on Saturday night. So you can watch Hermantown and Montemita at 1 o'clock at Hockey Day Minnesota. And then 4:30 White Bear Lake, Hill Murray, down at White Bear Lake. So have a great week. See you at the rink. And thank you, the PACT-TV studios, Jim, Liz, Vicki, and we'll see you next week.